All right, Dre. So in honor of our guest today, we're going to get a break to Fangirl Sports Network on three. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Ju-Ju dog diving towards the pylon. Go for two, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Fangirl Sports Network. Shout out to our guest, Tracy Sandler. If you want to stay tuned for our interview, that's going to be a little later on in the show. I'm your host, Ju-Ju Talk Sports, joined by my co-host, Aundre, Huynh, MMA Dre right here. So we actually do got some MMA to talk about. We actually got a few topics to talk about. But, if you enjoy hearing us talk, go ahead and hit that subscribe button at Slumpbuster Podcast, all that good stuff. We really appreciate your support. We keep growing each and every day, and it's all thanks to you. But on today's episode, some topics we're going to cover. So Super Cam is back, and he's back in Boston. So that's definitely going to be a big part of the news cycle over the next couple of weeks, probably leading into training camp. The entire season, Cam in New England, that's a crazy topic. We have a couple of players that have dropped out of their league's respective restart plans, whether that be the MLB, the NBA. One notable one, because it means someone's back. Someone's back in Los Angeles. Whether Dre's happy about it, we'll find out later. And then, like I said, we do have some MMA topics. So we had our first Fight Island card take place, and we had a 5-star match that Dre knows all about. Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker, everyone's talking about it, so should we. But let's start here. Let's start in New England. Let's talk about the 2015 MVP Cam Newton and his return to the NFL, his debut in a new organization with the New England Patriots. First off, for Cam, it's kind of an interesting contract he signed here. So it's 1 year. The max he could possibly make this season, $7.5 million. It's mostly incentive laden. We never really thought that Jarrett Stidham was going to be starting in New England, did we?
No, absolutely not. I am surprised, like you said, you mentioned the max of 7.5 mil. We obviously know that Cam Newton is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, right? Or at least at that sort of upper echelon. He's maybe not up there with like your Patrick Mahomeses, right? Or even your, former Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, as of late, has been a little bit or Lamar Jackson's. But I would say he's probably at that next rung down. So he's definitely more deserving than like just $7.5 million, especially when it's all incentive based. But yeah, I'm actually not too surprised by this move. I knew that New England was going to do something, and it seems like they pulled a big rabbit out of their hat.
Yeah, so I mean, to speak of some contracts that are going to be bigger than what Cam's going to be making. So Jared Goff at the biggest right now at $31 million. Jimmy Garoppolo, $25 million. Derek Carr is going to make $19 million. Jacoby Brissett, $15 million. Ryan Fitzpatrick at $8 million. So those are a lot of the notable names that are going to be making more money than Cam Newton in this respective year. Now, that said, Cam has the highest upside of a lot of these quarterbacks just because he is a former MVP, and you can't discount that. The last time we saw Cam Newton at his best, well, you know all about this because your Steelers happened to hurt him in the game that ruined his season, but he was in a remarkable form going in that 2018 season. The Panthers were one of the best teams in the league, and then it just kind of went all downhill from there. His last full season was a couple years ago, the last time he played all 16 games. He's dealt with shoulder injuries. He's been in a car wreck, foot injuries, which is not what you want to hear about for a running quarterback. So do we believe that Cam still has enough in the tank to lead this Patriots team?
This is why I think it's such a perfect sort of fit for Cam, and I'm actually not surprised that he ended up going this direction, is I still think that he has enough to be a serviceable quarterback, right? Like, I think he's still at least in your top half of quarterbacks in the league. I know that, there's 32 teams. He's probably not the best. Like I, mentioned a few that are already better than him, at least in my opinion. But I think he's probably better than, at least your 16th, worst person. But I think playing in the Patriots system and the Patriots organization, they know how to maximize sort of the productivity of every single player that they have, right? So Cam might not have, the biggest name weapons to throw to or anything like that, but he's going to have a really good system. And I believe they're going to be able to utilize him to the best of his ability, even if his ability isn't quite at the peak that it once was. So I still think that we get just as much productivity out of him in those MVP seasons. And I really think that the Patriots are going to be a force to reckon with this year. What do you think?
So, I mean, we have thrown up a couple Instagram polls in this regard to kind of like gauge the audience, kind of gauge where people are feeling about Cam Newton. At the moment, I put up 2 questions. 1, is Cam Newton going to be more closer to MVP Cam, or is he going to be sad Cam, broken down Cam? That one was a close one, but right now at this current juncture, 51% of the vote is going towards MVP Cam returning. Okay. Next question to that. Is Cam going to have a better year than Tom Brady out in Tampa Bay? Right now, Cam has the more favorable vote situation amongst our voters at this time. It's still close. It's about 57% to 43%, but I'm intrigued to see how that plays out. So Bill's first year without Brady, Brady's first year without Bill. How are the New England Patriots going to perform? How are the Tampa Bay Bucks going to perform? Because we know we're going to be making that comparison in our head this entire year. And this is the first new quarterback that Bill's had in ages. I mean, a couple games of Jimmy, a game of Jacoby Brissett here, Matt Castle for a full year, but he hasn't really had a project. He hasn't had to really rebuild someone full time. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that Josh McDaniels system works for Cam Newton. A lot of those 3-step dropbacks. Is Cam good enough to do that? Is he good enough to be on target with those like shorter throws over the middle? He was doing it a lot with Christian McCaffrey towards the end there when the Panthers got Norv Turner in there. But he doesn't really have a Greg Olsen type in New England. New England's wide receiver situation is still as bad as we've made it out to be. I mean, that's why Brady left. He literally had no one to throw to. You look in Tampa Bay, give me Mike Evans. Give me like Godwin. Give me O.J. Howard is like their third best tight end. And that third best tight end because they still have Cameron Brate. They have Rob Gronkowski. Say what you want about Ronald Jones, but he's at least, a second-round running back. So they have pieces to work with. In New England for Cam, he's going to be dealing with, Julian Edelman, who was broken down a little bit last year. We'll see what we can get out of N'Keal Harry in his sophomore season. James White, Sony Michel, kind of, they're going to be heavy on the run. Personally, Dre, and you were saying you were leaning Patriots either way, and this was assuming when they had Stidham. So does this just kind of like further confirm your bias there? Are you still leaning with the Patriots to have a better year than Tampa?
I still think so. I mean, everything's going to be a little bit weird now dealing with the COVID situation and all that, but I think I'm still going to stick to my guns. I'm going to say the Patriots still have the better year now that they've gotten Cam Newton. I think that sort of reaffirms my belief in that. At the end of the day, I really think that it was a system and that it was, Coach Belichick and his team that he sort of put together, the way he runs things. And as long as Cam fits into that, right, we know that Cam has his own personality issues. We've seen it with the media, and it's literally the complete opposite of what Bill Belichick does. But if he's, humble enough, I think Cam is also going to be motivated, right? Like, like we said, the last time he even looked remotely good is when my Steelers injured him, and then, now he's never been the same. So I think he's going to have a little bit of fire under his belly that he's going to be like, hey, I've got to perform. And then, of course, the Patriots are going to have something to prove. So I really do think that the Patriots will do better. I do have to say that the Buccaneers are probably going to do better than I had originally thought as we were going through and doing the records, right, using the spreadsheet and all that. I was looking through and I was like, actually, I think the Bucs do beat a lot of the teams that are on the record. So that is the one thing that I think does hurt my sort of theory is that the the schedule for the Buccaneers was a little bit easier than I had thought that it would be, or at least it favors the Buccaneers a little bit more. But at the end of the day, I still think that Brady's old. He's going to a new system. Yes, he has more weapons, but he was never that great of an athlete anyways. I think he was more of a system quarterback. And I think now you have a good athlete in Cam who didn't necessarily have the best coaching. I'm not going to say that Ron Rivera is a bad coach, but now he's going to a really good system. So I'm going to take the Patriots with that.
I mean, you mentioned Ron Rivera, but I mean, you can't discount he also had Norv Turner there, and Norv Turner has been one of the better OCs in football over the last 20, 30 years. So he has had people around him. Now, you could say probably a drawback in Carolina was the targets around him weren't necessarily up to par. Though those last couple of years, I think I'd take DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey over James White and N'Keal Harry. So yeah, I think he was in a better position there in that regard. I don't know. I still look at New England, and I'm just trying to think, like, do these pieces fit? Because with Josh McDaniels, he's the same guy who drafted Tim Tebow, so he's not afraid of a mobile QB who has throwing accuracy issues. That's certainly been up Josh McDaniels' alley when he made that trade back in the day. But I do think that, there is the possibility that this just might not be a perfect, ideal fit. Now, I'll say this. I don't think that we're going to see Cam Newton walking into any press conferences and some of his Sunday attire. I feel like this year is going to be all business in my mind, especially out there being in New England. He's going to have a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder. So I would hope he gets to put away the Medea sunglasses for at least a season.
The little scarf that he wears over his head that makes him look like, the big bad wolf or something like that from Little Red Riding Hood.
My, how big your eyes are, grandmother. Seriously,
yeah.
Who dressed him that day? It was like with that trench coat. You remember that awful trench coat that Baker put on that made him look like, I don't know. We've read the Baker Mayfield memes. Mm-hmm. That stepdad that left to go get cigarettes
and never came back.
Never came back. That's exactly how Baker Mayfield looks. So it's like, who's better? I guess at least Cam's more fashionable, relatively. Mm-hmm. I don't get fashion. That's not up my alley. That's not what we're about here. We're about the sports. We'll carry on. Anyway, record prediction. I mean, I have not looking at the spreadsheet, just kind of like guessing. Where do you think New England's going to finish? I have them as a 9-win team now.
You think so? I
think the Bills are still better as an overall team. They're way better than the Jets. They're way better than the Dolphins. If Cam's healthy, and you're telling me Cam's healthy the entire season, I'll give them at least 9 wins because they have the more cohesive team.
Okay. I think in the spreadsheet, I don't have it open either, but I think I had Tampa getting at least 10 wins. I want to say I had them exactly at 10 wins. So in order to keep up with my prediction, I'm going to say 10 or 11 wins for New England. So I think at the very least, they will tie the same record as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, next subject of discussion. So MLB's back, NBA's back, NHL's back. All the return plans are in place, though not all parties are going to be returning to their respective sports. Just a quick note, in baseball, Mike Leake is one of the first pitchers that opted to not return. And in the world of basketball, and this is pertinent to a title contender here, potentially, Avery Bradly is not going to be returning for the Lakers. Now, there's a lot of questions out there. Should LeBron have resentment for Avery Bradly in making this decision? How do you feel about it personally, Dre, considering it's affecting your team?
I mean, as a sports fan, right, especially as a Lakers fan, I'm a little bit pissed off from a productivity standpoint of Avery Bradly. He's super valuable, not just on the offense. He's okay on offense for us. He's definitely not one of our go-to options, but on the defensive side, which is where we're already sort of lacking when it comes to playing teams like the Clippers, right, or Milwaukee, is it's really the defensive side that it's hard to keep up with those teams for us. And so I'm like, oh man, that sort of sucks. But the human side of me, from my understanding, Bradly, he has some his son or one of his kids. I can't remember exactly. I do want to say it's his oldest son or his youngest son. Does have some health issues, and he, what I believe Bradly has said is that, hey, if I get sick and I give it to my son, right, or my wife or whoever it is gets sick and we give it to our son, he could, potentially be in a life-threatening, situation. And I've got to respect that, right? Like, you have to do what's best for your family. And me personally, what I've said in our state of New Mexico is our governor is really strict, right? And she said, hey, I'm going to have really strict enforcement. I think at one point we had the strictest COVID-19 enforcement laws, or rules, I should say, in place out of any of the states. And I've always been on the side of, hey, I'd rather be safe than sorry. And I'm going to take the same approach with these players. So from a standpoint of, man, it's going to suck to not have Avery Bradly as one of our go-to options. I am with him, especially when it comes to, to family health and issues like that. Like, you should never put any job above your family. So I can't fault him for it.
Meanwhile, here in the state of Texas, Governor Abbott has said "fuck all," and we're not doing so hot in that regard. But it's fine. We'll power through.
At least you guys do have freedoms, right? That's sort of the trade-off of the governors, right? Is our governor is really strict. We can't really go out and do anything. You guys go out and get a beer. So
yeah, not anymore. They actually shut down bars. Now it's strictly to restaurants. It's a whole thing. Every state's going on a different rule set. Back to Avery Bradly, though, here. Couldn't you make the argument, though? It's like a lot of players aren't necessarily bringing their families down. If you're in the bubble, if you're getting tested before, after, during, the chances of you contracting COVID and bringing it back home are way more minimal than if you were just out in the public, like the majority of us.
Yeah, I think you can definitely make that argument. The other argument, though, is, just from a basic parenting and standpoint, even without a virus, like, could you imagine being away from your kid, especially since we have said, hey, the Lakers are a title contender. That means they run all the way up possibly through October. So he's not going to be able to see his kid just in case he does contract it from, now starting in July all the way through October. So I get that standpoint as well, that like, hey, yes, you'll be in a bubble, you'll be fairly protected, and if you do contract it, just don't go see your kid for 3 weeks or whatever. But also from a parenting standpoint, like, I would hate to be away from my kid for that long, especially knowing that they do have those health issues. So
isn't that kind of, though, like, come with the territory of being a pro athlete, specifically in basketball or baseball, where you play so many games anyway? Usually they're on the road, so they don't necessarily always have their family. I mean, I guess this is a little bit more extreme in the sense that you're going to be on the road for months as opposed to just a couple weeks at a time, potentially. But I think most families are prepared for those situations. It's not nearly as egregious, for example, like the WWE, where these guys are literally on the road 300 days a year. I mean,
no, I think there's something to that, right? And especially when it comes to like basketball, where you could get traded at any moment, right? If they said, hey, mid-season, you're going from Dallas to New York, you have to pack up and go to New York, right? And I doubt you might keep your family back in Dallas. You might move them to New York, but from my understanding, a lot of those players, it's
especially
like,
during a school year or something like that. Most of the time they do leave their kids down there for at least to finish out their school year before they move, unless they know they're going to sign like an extension or something. Sometimes most families too, just keep their family in one set location, regardless of where the team is. I think actually Philip Rivers is doing something similar, as I think he's living in Florida now these days, but obviously he's playing in Indianapolis. So
yeah, well, he needs a compound though for all.
You want to talk about a family man right there? You want to talk about a guy who cares about his family? That's Philip Rivers. Or maybe he just needs the excuse to get out of the house after dealing with an entire football team worth of kids.
Yeah, that's why he has to keep them all in one place. Could you imagine trying to move like 12 kids or whatever it is that he has every single year? Yeah, right. There's no way.
I think that's kind of comes down to like, there's a lot of tax purposes. Obviously, Florida being tax-free, Indianapolis, different tax situations. That's probably why he has to consider where he lives. We're going off on a tangent, but I mean, it is a unique situation. Good old Phil has. Wear a condom, please. Your poor wife.
I'm pretty sure that's against their religious beliefs or something, Ju-Ju. Like, they just gotta just risk it. Just go and
it's like
fingers crossed
roulette every time they have sex. But
yeah. So okay, back to the topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're getting yeah. Well, anyway, so the Avery Bradly thing, I guess my thought on it is it's such a small stretch. it's a microcosm of his career, and who knows how many title shots you really have left in the chamber. I think I would have powered through, personally, myself. Okay. If I've put in that situation, I'm playing with the greatest player arguably alive in LeBron James at the tail end of my career. Mm-hmm. I have a chance to really do something special. And I know it's a bit of a weird, unique situation, but it comes down to like family thing, screw it. I'll get triple tested just to make sure that when I do come back home, I don't have to worry about it. And hopefully when I do come back home, I'm coming back with a ring on my finger, you know? I'm coming home with championship memories. I think that it's a sacrifice that a lot of people are having to make, just not necessarily on the scale of being like a professional athlete. So I think for that time period, I think it would have been worth it, personally. That's how I feel about Avery Bradly. But there's a second part to this story that we can't forget. So Avery Bradley's not going to be around. So who is? Let's go to LeBron's friends list. If MySpace was still a thing, he used to be in the top 4, but he might be outside of the top 8 at this point. He's still on the friend list, but he's not quite as close. J.R. Smith is now a Laker. So the last time we saw JR, or the last time we remember JR, I should say, he did play after this, but it was not his shining moment, to say the least.
No, it was
There
not.
was a few seconds left in the clock. JR had the ball. They were down, and he tried to dribble out the clock. So, you all remember the story. You remember the memes. You still remember LeBron James going like, you know, yep. It's just such an iconic image. But the bottom line, he's back with LeBron. Can LeBron trust J.R. Smith?
I think from a talent standpoint, J.R. Smith was definitely one of the most talented players sort of coming out in his class, right? At least from an athletic standpoint. The dude, I think, was in a slam dunk competition as well as a three-point shooting competition. Like, he can play basketball. He just had that really stupid lapse in, judgment at the end of that game, especially when it's like, I think if they had won that game, momentum totally changes for Cleveland, right? And I think Golden State's mind is blown a little bit like, oh my God, did the Cleveland Cavaliers just beat us in game 1? And then, unfortunately, Cleveland was just never able to get it back together. But as far as J.R. Smith, so back to the individual, I would not trust him so much with like, hey, we got to put him in the starting rotation. As much as like, yes, he's a part of the banana boat, right, with LeBron James, or he might be, being pulled behind the banana boat and a little floaty now. I still would say that, one, we don't even know how good a shape he's in, right? Like, who knows if he's just been sitting on the couch? Who knows if he's been actually working out? And if he has been working out, is it just working out at the YMCA? Is it working out, at a local college with an NBA team? What has he been doing? And so that's what I just worry about is, one, he doesn't fit too well in the system. And two, I don't know about, his conditioning and his ability to physically play basketball right now. So for all those reasons, I would say no, I don't trust him with a large role. But some stuff as far as like, hey, can he, play defensively and guard maybe some of those wings or guards, right? And have to switch between those type of players. I think he probably could still do that and at least, get a little bit of time here and there, but I would not rely on him in like a starting capacity or even as like my number one go-to 6-man off the bench.
I think with JR, I don't think basketball's one of those sports you could just jump into if you haven't been playing for a while. Certainly not in a playoff run. So I do have my questions in that regard. I mean, there's a lot of players that have been talked about potentially coming back. I know, like, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, but the potential of KD would have came back or Kyrie would have come back, and would that Brooklyn Nets team have been an interesting title contender? Well, there was a lot of arguments that why they probably couldn't, right? Mm-hmm. That's saying how talented those guys are. J.R. Smith, like you said, he can play basketball. He's a good basketball player. He's not a great basketball player. And if it's only J.R. Smith never played another basketball game again after that infamous moment, I wouldn't have been surprised, because he was kind of like treading water at that point in his career. like he did have limited minutes with the Cavs. He was off the bench. He was just a complimentary piece to LeBron in those like last couple of Cleveland years. So it's not like he was like an integral part of their lineup or any team's lineup, really. Maybe the Knicks. But, you know, so it's just like, I don't think it's necessarily a wow transaction for the Lakers. I don't think it's going to make or break them from being a title contender. I think Avery Bradly did. I do think that was a bigger loss than what they got back in return. Because if we're just Avery Bradly versus J.R. Smith at this point in his career, I would take Avery Bradly every day. So I think that's why I look at the finals this year. I look at who's going to be there. Sorry, man, I don't think the Lakers are going to do it after what I've seen. I think that the Clippers, so long as they're healthy, so long as they figured out their rotations, have a better shot. I think that's really the only other team in the West I think are going to give issues. I don't think like Denver, even with aside from the Nikola Jokic like stuff going on, I don't think Houston's really going to make damage. Even though like Anthony made a good case for them on the last pod. I think it was always just going to be Lakers Clippers, and I think now the Clippers have the significant edge given that. So, yeah, I think this really screws over the Lakers big time.
No, I totally agree. He's definitely one of our go-to options, and even in the starting rotation, right? And we do have other guards that could possibly sort of fill his role. I know that we got like KCP is a big one that I've heard, more so for KCP's defense. You've got Alex Caruso as well that could slide in there. But you're right. Like the last time that we saw Avery Bradly, or at least one of the last big games, one of the last 2 times that we saw him, he put up 24 points, right? And had one heck of a game on defense. And so it's like, really, what options do you have, right? How do you replace that 24 points that he put up? I can't remember if it was Milwaukee or the Clippers. I want to say it was the Clippers game that he put up 24 points. And then, like I said, he does a great job on defense too. He was hustling. And, you know, you even had guys like Anthony Davis give him props, say that Avery Bradly sort of is, you know, that lifeline for our defense, right? Like if he goes, we're all going, right? Or if he's a little bit slow, then we're all slow on defense. And that's hard to, you know, tangibly say like, hey, this is, you know, what makes him so good. And so I think you're right. I think, you know, that's a big spark that the Lakers are losing, and they don't have that piece of their fire anymore. And so that does worry me a little bit about the Clippers. I still have to have faith, right? You know, this is Kobe's year. I think storylines do play a big role. So I think, you know, LeBron James too, of like, hey, I've got to overcome COVID-19, all that stuff. I really do think that LeBron is going to find some way, and the rest of the team, right? Anthony Davis, I think they are going to still find a way to be champions. But if you had to tell me from an objective standpoint, and I wasn't a Lakers fan, I would not be surprised picking the Clippers. But storylines, and I'm going with the Lakers.
Yeah, it definitely does put more pressure on LeBron to be a better defender, a better perimeter defense. So we'll see if the Lakers, LeBron, they can step up. Given the situation, I think a lot of teams are just going to have to make these concessions. Like I said, it's happened in a couple sports. Like just players are afraid to come back. I know people that are afraid to come back to work. It's a unique time. It's a unique time in our society. So let's kind of take it back to something normal, something that you know well. I guess kind of abnormal. I mean, it was on an island after all. It was separated from society. No fans. I mean, it's normal in a Mortal Kombat video game, but not necessarily normal in real life. Anyway, we had a 5-star classic. People love this. Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker, Saturday night. Decision went Poirier's way, but a lot of people are making the case it could have went either. We did another poll on Instagram as well, fight of the year. So the other option I listed there was, of course, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang, and the poll went towards Poirier and Hooker by an overwhelming margin. Literally 83% of our voters voted on last Saturday's matchup over Joanna and Weili. So, Dre, do you agree? Are you with them there? Do you think that it should be closer? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. One, I think it's sort of recency bias, right? Of like, we just saw Poirier and Hooker, and so you're like, oh man, that's got to be the best fight I've ever seen, and you forget about some of the stuff that's happened before, right? Like especially like you said, the Weili and the Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight was fantastic. It just seems so long ago that you're like, when was that? Was that even this year? And so I think that's one part of it is the recency bias. And I will also say, like, I do think some of it is that it was a girls' fight. And I know that women's MMA is not as popular as men's MMA unless you're Amanda Nunes or old Ronda Rousey, right? Like, nobody was really buying pay-per-views for women's, even with Joanna Jędrzejczyk being one of the best strikers in the world at the time when she was the champion. And so I think those both play a little bit of a role in it. I will say, though, I personally did actually like the Poirier-Hooker fight a little bit more than the Jędrzejczyk fight versus Jong. And so as much as I think it's disrespectful to have that big of a margin between the two fights, I still do lean a little bit Poirier and Hooker. And, man, it was a fantastic fight. Did you get to see it?
I didn't get a chance to see it, so the audience is relying on you. Guide us through Saturday night's matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did choose Poirier for this fight. Unfortunately, I don't have it documented anywhere, so people might call me a liar and be like, "Oh, Aundre doesn't, he's a liar, whatever." No, I did choose Poirier.
Who cannot trust that face?
I know, and you guys have seen me choose, main events wrong before, anyways, right? So I have no problem saying I'm wrong. So I did choose Poirier for this, but I will say the first 2 rounds I was super worried because Hooker was like on fire. He came out, and he's so long, he's so tall, and he throws these really interesting right knees from like just straight up standing. Like, you'll be there just in your typical Muay Thai or boxing stance, and you'll like eat a knee from Dan Hooker. And I was like, man, like that's incredible. He has a lot of really good combinations that he was able to put together as well in the first and second round. And then he even has like some really slick head movement to where like he even goes into like a duck under motion and will take your back off it. So I was actually really, really surprised that in the first 2 rounds, I had thought Poirier was going to be finished at one point. Like, it was the end, I want to say, of the second round, and Poirier was barely standing on his feet. He was eating a whole lot of shots, and I thought for sure, like, all right, this fight's going to end in the next round. But then, you sort of see Dustin Poirier. He comes back, he takes the third, and so I was like, all right, that's good. Had it been a regular fight, Poirier definitely would have lost that. But at championship rounds, he ends up coming back, wins the fourth as well. And then ultimately it came down to the fifth, and I think Hooker just didn't quite have it in the gas tank anymore. And ultimately he lost the fifth. But there's definitely a lot of striking going back and forth. Hooker surprised me with how good his grappling and his takedown defense were. So he was able to get out of quite a bit of takedowns, especially Poirier. I think Poirier is the stronger of the grapplers. Dan Hooker trains at City Kickboxing, which we know that's like Israel Adesanya, a lot of those guys that they're really, really good strikers, but they're not, not necessarily the best grapplers, but still Hooker was impressive. So I will say, Poirier did a fantastic job. I'm glad he came out with the win since that was my pick. But I don't think anybody should knock Hooker at all for this fight. Like, he did a fantastic job. And if this wins fight of the year, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat. I mean, like I said, if it's beating Joanna and Weili by that margin, then what's next? What can really beat it? Unless you tell me Stipe and DC go 5 rounds just to the finish, maybe. But we're running out of months in the year. We're a little more than halfway through, so it's going to take a lot. And kudos to Dustin. Now he's kind of in a unique situation at 155. It's like, well, can you beat Khabib? We saw.
Yeah, and we've already seen that.
Yeah,
and he hasn't.
And not
right?
so
he
much.
Got destroyed. So.
Yeah, so like he's rocking a hard place in terms of like the rankings for him. But all right, guys. So that's just a quick little MMA wrap up. We'll kind of get into some more picks here as like things progress on Fight Island. But I actually had a great chance to interview Miss Tracy Sandler. She is the CEO and founder of the Fangirl Sports Network. So chances are, if you're on Instagram, right, and you're looking at your favorite team, you'll either see Steelers Fangirl, Browns Fangirl, Niners Fangirl, Seahawks Fangirl. Basically, all 32 teams in the NFL are represented. They do fantastic work covering each of your teams. So definitely check out each one of those pages. And for me, it was a chance to obviously geek out on the Niners here, as she is also a awesome beat writer for the team. So just putting that note in there that I'm no longer the biggest Niners fangirl on this show. Anyway, quick word from our sponsors and then my interview with Tracy Sandler.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
Hey guys, this is Ju-Ju Talk Sports. I am joined today by the founder, the CEO of the Fangirl Sports Network. She is also the original 49ers fangirl and, of course, a credentialed 49ers beat writer, Miss Tracy Sandler. Welcome onto the Slumpbuster.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, I've been looking forward to having you on for weeks. Obviously, you see the helmet in the background. Big time Niners fan myself. 49 Reasons to Listen, my second show. But we are focusing here on Slumpbuster podcast today. And kind of what caught my eye and why I've been so interested in getting you on for a while now, too, is part of starting a sports page is obviously you follow all the teams. So you follow all the beat writers. And every time I typed in Titans fangirl popped up. Browns fangirl popped up. Seahawks fangirl popped up. And eventually got to the 49ers fangirl herself. And I don't think it's a coincidence either that 49ers CEO, just got the ball rolling. So tell me about that experience, because I was kind of like reading about your bio that it all kind of went back to being at a 1989 NFC Championship game, which I could only imagine was the most awesome experience to see Joe Montana live.
Yeah, it was. It was really cool. I was a little girl, and I went to the game and actually came from LA. I'm from Los Angeles and came with my family from LA. Most of them, except for my brother, were rooting for the Rams. And somewhere in the second quarter, I turned to my mom and said, I love Joe Montana. And that was it. I've been a 49ers fan ever since, and then was lucky to get to turn that into a business. So that was the beginning and the genesis of it, and here we are.
Gotcha. So you've just been in the Bay Area your entire life?
No, Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles.
Oh, you're from Los Angeles. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, kind of like the creation, how did it go in like building a team together to make the Fangirl Sports Network work? Like finding different like writers from each and every organization. Did you kind of do a lot of the like recruitment yourself, or what was that process like?
I did. I mean, I will say, and we'll talk more about it as we get closer to the season. So we can't go into all the details right now. We are changing the model a little bit going forward with Fangirl. But it was me who did a lot of the recruiting. I got a lot of recommendations from friends. Women would reach out to us on social media wanting to be a part of it. And so that's kind of how we built it from there. But we are going to be making some changes in the fall, just kind of how we're covering and, the amount of people. But that's part of running a business too. You do a bunch of different things and you learn what works and what doesn't work. And then, sometimes things like a pandemic come in and change everything. But yeah, that's how we did it. And I will say, it's very important to build a good team, to know what you know and what you don't know, and build good people around you. And I do have wonderful people that work with me at Fangirl.
That's fine. I accept I don't know a lot. So I definitely need some more people that kind of know what they're talking about. That's part of the fun of having all these great guests that we've been fortunate to have on our show. You get to learn about everyone's little different backgrounds. So tell me, like, as a young reporter, how did that go getting in the Niners organization? Because, I mean, obviously, and a pro team, that's like no joke.
Well, first of all, I'm very lucky that I cover the Niners because they're very supportive, and I think they're really open-minded in terms of like this kind of stuff, and they've always been super supportive of me and Fangirl. And essentially, it was kind of just building the relationship, kind of, I guess, proving myself, working hard, earning their trust. I started covering a lot of their community events, which is something I still cover and is really means a lot to me. I have a background in nonprofits and a background in community work, and I do a lot of volunteering. So it was very important to me to cover those events, because those events just don't always get as much airtime or page time, so to speak, just because people don't have as much time or room for it. So that was a place that was really important to me. So I started to get to know them by covering the events, and built from there. And like I said, they're a really great organization. They've really been so supportive of me, of what I've been doing with Fangirl. So it's been great. But again, and I say this a lot to people, it's building that trust. And when you're starting something and you want to cover a team, cover a player, like, a lot of people want to do that. And especially if you're just kind of starting something on your own and you come in, I think you can't expect to come right in and be like, okay, so hi, my name's Tracy. I started a blog. I was wondering if I could do a sit down with the coach. You gotta, like, it's just not, there's just like a way to go about it. And so it was just building that relationship just in the beginning. Hi, I'm Tracy. I've started this thing, 49ers Fangirl. I'd love for you to take a look. Please let me know your thoughts, checking in a little bit. And then as the community events came up, I started saying, can I cover some of these events, which I still cover all of that stuff today. And, you just build trust and relationships over time. But that's so much of this business, is building trust and relationships.
That makes sense. I mean, we are in such a unique time, like in the media, like anyone could just like jump in, like you could buy the microphone, but it's also comes into putting in the work, like you said, just sending out like the messages to the right people, even if you're not sending out the message directly. So if I was to example, message Kyle Shanahan, probably get left on read. Fair enough. But, like messaging people around, and eventually over time, that trust to have that kind of interview, because I hope he one day accepts my DMs, because I'm rocking that new era hat that he's made so famous that everyone loves. Well, speaking of the Niners, so it's awesome that you get to cover them in this like second era of like the team success. So like growing up as a Niners fan, so I didn't get a chance to see Joe, really. I didn't get a chance to see Steve Young, really. I got to see a lot of pain and suffering in the mid-2000s up until we got Jim Harbaugh in there. So it's nice that we had those full 4-year run, and then we had the Chip Kelly years, and then we had the Jim Tomsula, and then finally Kyle comes here, and it just seems like we hit that like second wave. And 2019 was such a unique year in itself. The team came into its own. The players were finally, everyone was healthy. That was a big part of the last 2 years, a lot of injury concerns over that. How do you think the 2020 team, though, stacks up against 2019, given that we are replacing Buckner with Kinlaw, we are replacing Emmanuel Sanders with Brandon Ayuk, and I'm going to miss Joe Staley. He was the heart and soul of the team, but in comes Trent Williams. So a lot of new faces, new places.
There are definitely, I like that. A lot of new faces, new places. I think that that's very true. I think the 2020 team is going to be a really strong team. I think that we saw last season, especially in the playoffs, that there really wasn't another team in the NFC that came close. The Seahawks are always a wild card when they play the 49ers. So you could have a much better 49ers team, which I think one could argue the 49ers did in 2012, but you could have 2013, better 49ers team that still doesn't beat the Seahawks, because there's always that weirdness, and there's the Russell Wilson factor. But I do think that the 2020 49ers are going to be competitive. I do think they'll still be the NFC team in the Super Bowl. Listen, it's not so easy to get to Super Bowls, so I don't discount that. But you mentioned a couple of the new faces. I do think Kinlaw has a real opportunity and really has the potential to be a superstar. He will be a rookie. So that, there's always that, but we saw last year with Nick Bosa, he was a rookie, and we saw what he could do. So I don't expect Kinlaw to come in and be Buckner, but I do expect that Kinlaw will come in and be incredibly successful and be complemented by the other people on that line, and that the defensive line really will not regress much, because I just think there's so much talent there, including Javon Kinlaw. Of course, we won't really know until September, but I do believe that he has the potential to really shine there. In terms of Brandon Ayuk, that's another one we don't really know. It's certainly an Emmanuel Sanders-like receiver. In the last couple of weeks, the 49ers have seen some receiver injuries. Luckily, they came in June, which is better than if they came in August, September, October. So hopefully Deebo Samuel, in his words, he'll be back in 10 weeks. Hopefully he really will be back in 10 weeks, or at least soon after that. So there's that. And then I think you can't really discount COVID, because we don't know how that's going to affect players. We don't know what's going to happen there. But I think in terms of talent and ability, especially in comparison to the rest of the NFC, the 2020 49ers should be as competitive as the 2019 49ers, of course, any given Sunday. But I imagine that. I do think Tampa Bay obviously just became a much better football team. But you know what? That's another thing we don't really know. I think we have to see how does Brady really perform in Tampa Bay. He has a lot more offensive weapon now. Will he be the Brady of old, or will he be the Brady of last year? We're going to see a lot of things. So I just bring that up in terms of competitiveness in the NFC, but I do think the 49ers will remain competitive. And like I said before, as we saw in the playoffs, there isn't really another team that came close. And really, we even saw that during the regular season in the NFC. They had the very close contest with the Saints and the very close contests with the Seahawks. But other than that, they pretty much dominated in the NFC.
Yeah, there is something unique about that Seahawks rivalry. It doesn't matter the year. Russell Wilson it's just been a headache ever since he was drafted into that organization. So many times, especially with that 2013 defense, the 2019 defense, it's like they have him wrapped up, and somehow he just managed to barrel out of the pocket, find Bill Disley or someone 30 yards deep. I'm sure you've had this rivalry with, your fellow 49ers coworker there. Okay, well, let's see. So you did mention COVID. So the Niners really can't discount COVID, because we had a player test positive, in addition to the Deebo injury, in addition to Richie James injury. So Camp Jimmy didn't really go as planned, to be frank. Didn't go as well as Camp Alex in 2011. So how do you evaluate this team following Camp Jimmy? Like, it was great that they got to go out there and, practice together, Jimmy to throw to Brandon Ayuk, but there was some losses along the way.
There were, but it's football. So, that's nobody's fault. It's football. So I think anything can happen. Also, like I said before, it's June. Yeah. So I think this is very different than, like I said, if it were August. I mean, we'll see with Deebo's injury. Hopefully it really, like I said, only is 10 weeks or soon after that. But I would say certainly probably wasn't ideal, but it is football. So it's the thing, you just never know. And that's the thing with this sport that I think is so hard, which is why, when I said earlier, it's really hard to get to a Super Bowl, and I don't discount that. And because I think with football, maybe more than any other sport, one play and the season's done for any team. So, and we saw that a couple years ago with Jimmy in that third game in Kansas City, and he tore his ACL, and that was that. And so, I think that we can't blame Camp Jimmy, and I think it's just not that you were, but it's football. So you never know what's going to happen. But I go back to what I keep saying, and maybe this is just something I keep saying to convince myself, but it's June, and you'd certainly rather see these things in June than later.
Yeah, I'm not going to blame Jimmy Garoppolo. I love Jimmy Garoppolo. Unfortunately, a lot of the media doesn't really, to be honest. Actually, Chris Sims just released his quarterback rankings, and he had Jimmy Garoppolo ranked 20th behind such names as Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen. There was another rookie on here. Let me pull that up. Oh, let's see. Ryan Tannehill, Ben Roethlisberger coming off of Tommy John surgery. But my bottom line is Jimmy Garoppolo disrespected, or why is he so polarizing amongst these QB rankings? Because to me, you look at his record, the Niners with and without him, he puts up W's. I mean, that year in 2018 when he tore his ACL, it was night and day. And I love Nick Mullins. I loved what he was able to do when he came to the game, but he's not Jimmy. And I don't think that this narrative that you could just replace Jimmy with Nick Mullins, I don't think has any weight behind it.
I don't think it has any weight behind it either. I don't understand this, as you said, disrespect of Jimmy Garoppolo. It baffles me because at the end of the day, a quarterback's job is, as is the whole team's job, is to win football games. And this quarterback won a lot of football games and took his team to a Super Bowl after in his first full year as a starter and coming off a torn ACL. He took his team to the Super Bowl. They did not win the Super Bowl, but they came really close. And what's so interesting to me is he's a pass to Emmanuel Sanders away from being Super Bowl MVP, and no one is talking about any of this. And so, slightly overthrown, or maybe, Emmanuel didn't get there in time. And so that's the unfortunate thing about football. And that's, I think, kind of the unfair thing about sports is you had a guy who was 7 minutes from being Super Bowl MVP, and now everybody's talking about, like, is Jimmy Garoppolo really the guy? I don't really understand the disrespect. I think Jimmy's a leader. His teammates really respect him, and he leads on the field, and he wins. You look at that New Orleans game. I don't know a lot of quarterback. Ryan Tannehill isn't winning that New Orleans game. Mm-hmm. Kirk Cousins isn't winning that New Orleans game. Kirk Cousins did beat New Orleans in the playoffs, but not in a fight, that back-to-back, like back and forth fight that we saw in that game.
Yeah. He lost literally to the Niners, and Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, and then he lost to the Niners. I mean, they had just destroyed the Vikings. So I don't really understand it. I don't think that Jimmy cares. I mean, he and I haven't talked about it or anything like that, but I don't. Just in covering him, I think for Jimmy, like, he's the quarterback of the team that went to the Super Bowl, and he wants to win, and obviously wanted to win the Super Bowl, but he's going to keep playing. And I think we're as good as he was last year. I think we're going to see even a much better Garoppolo for the reasons I said before. You have a full year as a starter behind his belt or under his belt, and he doesn't have to worry about the ACL. There's a full year of getting used to moving in different ways and not sure what's going to work and what's not going to work, and that will be done now. And the experience of having gone to a Super Bowl where he's the starter. He's been to Super Bowls, but he was not the starter. And that makes a really big difference. So I don't get it, but I think he's the guy for the 49ers. I love Nick Mullins, but you're right. I mean, you could just look at the two records. It does make a difference, and I'm a big Nick Mullins fan. I think he's awesome. So I don't really get it. I don't have a good answer for it. It's not something I really understand, but I think he'll prove a lot this year, and I think it's an important year for him to do that. But I don't feel like if the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl this year that Jimmy's out, because the other question would be, who's going to replace him? I mean, that's the other thing. It's like I went to Michigan, so I'm a big Michigan fan. Jim Harbaugh's, of course, now the coach at Michigan, and he's been, in a word, a bit of a disappointment. That being said, when people say, do you want Jim Harbaugh fired? I say, who would replace him that's better? Different, because I'm putting Jimmy way above Jim Harbaugh. Oh, both Jims. That's very funny. So I have Jimmy way above Jim here. But who is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't think there's anyone available that's going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. That's my personal.
Exactly. Patrick Mahomes isn't falling in your lap. I doubt, like, Deshaun Watson's going to get traded out of Houston. I have him personally in my rankings. I can't mark him any lower than 8 to 10. In that range is where I kind of have him. And
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, part of that argument too was, I'll just straight up ask you, would you have taken Brady this offseason? No. Okay. Then the second part of that, because I'm even seeing this in the internal 49ers media coverage, Aaron Rodgers.
No.
So, yeah, then those are the two big names when people talk about replacing Jimmy Garoppolo. And if you and I are both in agreement on there, I don't see a case to move him.
I don't either. And that's no disrespect to Brady or Aaron Rodgers. And maybe the argument is even more with Aaron Rodgers right now and where he is in his career. But I think at this point, like, you've also got a very complicated offense that Kyle Shanahan has. And Jimmy Garoppolo has had now, he's had the one full year of experience in the offense, but he's now had like 2.5, 3 years of actually learning the offense. So I don't think you do want to place that. I think Garoppolo is the real deal. I think this season is going to prove that. I don't know how you can prove it more than going to the Super Bowl in your first full year as a starter, but I think this season is really going to prove that. And I think he's the best guy for the job. On my other
side, he actually did work out some numbers there. So I think he has to get over 4,000 yards. So get that number slightly up. He was only missed it by like less than 100.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe get over the 30 touchdown mark. And then, of course, half the turnovers. That's kind of like my thoughts on Jimmy. As far as another big Niners story this offseason has been the George Kittle contract. So George Kittle, is he a tight end? Is he a left tackle? Is he a wide receiver? How do we pay him? He's this unicorn type player that we can't quite put a value to. He's saying 20 million. I even have to give a walkaway number, and I'm looking more like 17 to 18 million a year at best, just because when you pay a guy 20 million, you're walking away from 3 or 4 potential role players on that 53-man roster. So what about you, Tracy? Where are you on this George Kittle contract situation? What are you paying the man?
I don't usually get into numbers on that. That is above my pay grade, and I am not the person that comes up with the numbers on that. I would say George Kittle is a tremendously special player, and I think the 49ers will do everything they can to sign him to a long-term deal. But I tend to stay away from throwing out numbers because that is not my area of expertise. But I think Kittle is a really important member of this team. And as you said earlier about Joe Staley was the heart and soul, I think Kittle is really very much now the heart and soul, one of the hearts and souls of this team. And so I think they will figure it out. And they will no doubt be able to, in my opinion, they'll no doubt be able to figure out a way to get Kittle signed long-term. And, I know the tag would be an option for next year, but they will get this figured out. But in terms of what they pay him, I don't know. And also, unless George Kittle flat out says to me, here's what I'm asking to be paid every year, I don't always listen to the noise and the rumors. We'll see. I think we'll see how it all plays out. But I think they'll find a way. It's George Kittle.
Are you closer to the Austin Hooper or Julio Jones? Not asking you to put a number, but where are you on that scale between 10 and 20 million?
I don't do it.
Fair enough.
It's a general policy. I just don't do it.
Fair enough. I'm not going to get you on a gotcha there. So, all right, let me ask you to close out, let you on your way. I know you're a very busy person. We got training camp coming up, so you have a lot on your plate.
Dude.
So tell me, this is a Slumpbuster original. Your favorite all-time sports movie. Go.
Oh, God, that's hard. I have to give a quick back. We've been doing Fangirl Flick of the Week every week on the Fangirl Sports Network Instagram. And so we've been watching all sports movies. That's such a tough call. But I think it's going to have to be, can I do a 3-way tie?
I suppose. Yeah, go ahead.
They're all baseball movies. I'll go. My number one, I think, is Bull Durham, with a close second, Field of Dreams in Major League.
Yes. I've been the lone person just screaming Major League in people's face because I'm a big-time baseball guy myself. And we've had about 25, 30 guests so far to this point. We ask them each this question. Remember the Tight Ends is overwhelming, has a huge lead.
Fantastic. Great. We watched it a couple weeks ago for Flick of the Week, and it is a fantastic movie. That Major League does make me laugh. And Bull Durham, I love baseball. So
yeah, the way I look at Major League, you could throw it on random Tuesday, on in the background. Willie Mays Hayes, Rick Vaughn, Charlie Sheen at his best before everything went crazy. All right, Tracy.
Great. It really is. It's a fantastic movie. It really is.
All right, Tracy. Tell everyone what they need to know about Fangirl, where to listen, where to find you guys. I think, like I said, you do great work, and I want everyone to know.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me today. This was a lot of fun. I would say find us on Instagram at Fangirl Sports Network. That is the best way to find everything. That will take you to both of our podcasts and to all of the content that we do on a weekly and daily basis. So I would say find us there, and then subscribe and leave a review to the Get My Job and Fangirl Playbook podcasts on iTunes.
All right, guys. Tracy Sandler, check her out. All right, guys, we are back. So hope you enjoyed the interview. Anyway, guys, 20% off plus free shipping and handling with manscaped.com. But let me tell you real quick about our other sponsor on the other side of this break here, razorsport.com. So They have a wide variety of betting bots and experts to help you beat Vegas. Beat those Vegas Sharps. So definitely go check them out. That is razersport.com. They basically just know, they won't tell you how much to bet, but they'll tell you who to bet on, the right game to bet on, and all it takes to, get some money in your pocket. That's all what we need right now. A little bit more money in your pocket. Hopefully, maybe donate to the Slumpbuster. Who knows? We may come up with a PayPal. I'm just saying, cash at me. Maybe DM me your Venmo. We'll see what happens. Anyway, guys. So, Dre, any thoughts as we put a close to this episode? Any other things going on? Any more documentaries you're gonna watch?
Let's see. So I know that they just came out with I want to say it's called The Decision, right? Is the LeBron James decision. And so, it was funny when we were talking to Anthony about, hey, what do you think about LeBron James? Now that he's on the Lakers, I like him. But it was actually The Decision is when I really started to hate LeBron James. Not only because he was super good, right? And it's always, fun to hate against the best teams there are. But The Decision, I never liked the whole I'm taking my talents to South Beach thing. So I really am excited to watch that. And then, I finished up the Bruce Lee MMA 101. So I actually ended up, I first wanted to go a data analysis approach with it. And then I was like, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to take it a different way and do more of a technique approach and look at it from a technique standpoint. So I'm actually excited with the way it came out. So I re-recorded it. I'm going to release that one later tonight. So by the time you're listening to this episode, it should have already been released. So I'm excited with that as far as stuff that's coming up. What about you?
I'm excited to, first off, check that out because, I've been looking forward to that. Obviously, we had some thoughts on the Bruce Lee, commentary and how good he could be if he was in the sport today. So I definitely want to check that out. I encourage everyone to check that out. And in terms of viewing, I don't know, man. I think I'm finally going to cave and check out Ozark. Everyone's been telling me about Ozark for years. So I think I'm just going to finally just get into it. What else am I doing? But, it's an interesting week. Everything's starting to normalize-ish. Still hate the mask. Still going to be honest. I'm hating the mask. But it's just part of life now, so I guess I got to live with it. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the show. At Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and give your boy some love there. iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all your major streaming platforms. We're on them. Go ahead and bust that slump. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. And we'll see you on the next episode.